The rain came without warning that Saturday morning, turning the garden venue into a watercolor painting of ruined dreams. Monica Pierce stood in the bridal suite of the Riverside Inn, her ivory dress feeling heavier with each passing minute, staring at her phone screen as if willing it to ring. 45 minutes past the ceremony start time, and still no word from Derek. Her hands trembled as she scrolled through their message thread one more time, reading his last text from the night before. "Can't wait to marry you tomorrow. Love you both." Both meant her and Jamie, her 6-year-old daughter who was currently twirling in her flower girl dress in the corner, oblivious to the disaster unfolding. Monica's best friend, Patricia, burst through the door with mascara-stained cheeks and a look that made Monica's stomach drop. "He's not coming," Patricia whispered, her voice cracking. "I called his brother. Derek left town this morning. He said he couldn't go through with it." The words hung in the air like smoke, choking and impossible to clear. Monica felt her knees buckle, but she caught herself on the vanity table, her engagement ring glinting mockingly in the mirror's reflection. "Mommy, is it time yet?" Jamie's innocent voice cut through the silence. "I want to throw my flowers." Monica turned to face her daughter, forcing a smile that felt like shattered glass against her face. How do you tell a child that the man who promised to be her father had vanished? How do you explain that sometimes people leave, just like Jamie's biological father had left before she was even born? Monica had thought Derek was different. She had believed him when he said he loved them both, when he played tea party with Jamie, when he promised to be the family they deserved. "Just a few more minutes, sweetheart," Monica managed to say, her voice surprisingly steady despite the earthquake inside her chest. Patricia grabbed Monica's shoulders. "What do you want to do? There are 120 people out there. The minister is waiting. The caterers are asking questions." Monica closed her eyes, trying to think past the humiliation, past the pain, past the crushing weight of failure. She had used her savings for this wedding, money she should have kept for Jamie's future. She had told everyone at work about her happy ending, had smiled through their well wishes and advice. And now what? Now she was the pathetic single mother who couldn't even keep a man long enough to make it down the aisle. A knock on the door interrupted her spiral. "Monica, it's me. Can I come in?" She froze. That voice belonged to Christopher Whitmore, her boss at Whitmore Publishing. What was he doing here? She had invited him out of professional courtesy, never expecting the CEO of a major publishing house to actually attend his assistant editor's wedding. Patricia opened the door, and Christopher stepped inside, his tall frame filling the doorway. He was dressed in an impeccably tailored charcoal suit, his dark hair slightly damp from the rain. At 42, he carried himself with the kind of quiet confidence that came from building an empire from nothing. His gray eyes swept the room, taking in Monica's distress, Patricia's tears, and Jamie's innocent confusion with the swift assessment of someone used to making rapid decisions. "I heard what happened," he said simply, closing the door behind him. "Derek's brother is married to my cousin. She just called me." Monica wanted to disappear into the floor. Of course her humiliation would spread through connected networks of family and friends. By Monday morning, everyone at the office would know. "Mr. Whitmore, I'm so sorry you came all this way for nothing." "It doesn't have to be for nothing," Christopher said, his tone matter of fact, as if he were discussing a manuscript deadline rather than a personal catastrophe. He walked toward her with measured steps, his expression unreadable. "You have 2 choices. You can go out there and cancel everything, face all those people, explain what happened, or—" He paused, his eyes meeting hers with startling intensity. "You can let me stand in." "What?" Monica and Patricia said in unison. "Pretend I'm the groom," Christopher continued, his voice calm and steady. "We go through with the ceremony. Your daughter doesn't have her day ruined. You don't have to face the humiliation of explaining to 120 people that you've been abandoned. And I get to help someone who's been invaluable to my company for the past 4 years. Monica stared at him, certain she had misheard. "You can't be serious." "I'm always serious about important matters," Christopher replied. "Think about it, Monica. What's the alternative? You've already paid for everything. The people out there care about you. Why give Derek the satisfaction of destroying this day completely? We'll figure out the details later, but right now, in this moment, I'm offering you a way to salvage your dignity and protect your daughter from another disappointment. But it's insane, Monica protested, even as a small part of her brain began calculating the logic of his proposal. It's a fake marriage. It's lying to everyone. Is it more insane than what Derek just did? Christopher asked gently. Listen, I know this is unconventional. I know we barely know each other outside of work. But I also know you're one of the smartest, most capable people I've ever worked with. You deserve better than this. And Jamie... He glanced at the little girl who was now watching them with curious eyes. She deserves to remember this day without trauma. Patricia grabbed Monica's arm. He has a point, and honestly, what do you have to lose at this point? Monica looked at Christopher Whitmore, really looked at him. Perhaps for the first time since she'd started working at his company, she had always thought of him as distant, professional, married to his work. There had been whispers about a broken engagement years ago, about how he'd thrown himself into building his publishing empire afterward, but Monica had never paid much attention to office gossip. Now here he was, offering her the most bizarre rescue plan imaginable. Why would you do this? She asked quietly. Why would you put yourself in this position for me? Something flickered across Christopher's face, a shadow of old pain quickly masked. Let's just say I understand what it's like to be left standing alone when you thought you had a partner, and unlike whoever did that to me, I can actually do something to prevent that same feeling from destroying someone else's life. He extended his hand to her. What do you say, Monica? Will you let me help you? Jamie tugged on Monica's dress. Mommy, who's that man? Is he nice? Christopher knelt down to Jamie's level, his stern business persona softening. Hi there, I'm Christopher. I work with your mom. That's a very pretty dress you're wearing. I'm supposed to throw flowers, Jamie announced importantly. But we're waiting and waiting and waiting. Well, we shouldn't keep you waiting any longer, Christopher said, standing back up and looking at Monica with a question in his eyes. Monica's mind raced through the implications, the complications, the sheer audacity of what he was proposing. But underneath the chaos of her thoughts, one clear realization emerged. Derek had taken enough from her already. He had taken her trust, her savings, her plans for the future. He would not take her dignity. He would not ruin Jamie's day. And if accepting help from her enigmatic boss was what it took to reclaim some control over this disaster, then maybe that's exactly what she needed to do. She took a deep breath and placed her hand in Christopher's. Okay, she whispered. Let's do this. Christopher squeezed her hand once, a gesture of reassurance and solidarity. Then let's get married. The walk down the aisle felt surreal, like Monica was watching herself from outside her body. Christopher had disappeared through a side door to take his position at the altar, and now Monica stood at the back of the garden pavilion with her father, who looked at her with concerned eyes, but asked no questions. He simply squeezed her arm and whispered, "You sure about this, sweetheart?" She nodded, unable to trust her voice, and the string quartet began playing the processional. Jamie went first, scattering rose petals with enthusiastic abandon, her earlier impatience forgotten in the joy of finally performing her important task. The guests turned to watch, smiling at the adorable flower girl, and then their eyes lifted to see Monica. She heard the gasps, saw the confused expressions as people craned their necks to see who was standing at the altar. Where they expected Derek's stocky frame and sandy blonde hair, they found Christopher Whitmore's tall, distinguished presence. Monica kept her eyes forward, focusing on Christopher's steady gaze as she moved toward him. He stood with perfect posture, his hands clasped in front of him, and when she finally reached the altar, he stepped forward and took her hand with surprising gentleness. His palm was warm and dry against her cold, trembling fingers. "You've got this," he murmured, so quietly that only she could hear. "Just follow my lead." The minister, Reverend Thomas, looked thoroughly confused but professionally composed. Christopher had apparently taken a moment to speak with him before taking his position, because the Reverend cleared his throat and began the ceremony with only the slightest hesitation. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to witness the union of Monica Pierce and Christopher Whitmore." The ceremony passed in a blur. Monica heard herself repeating vows she had memorized for a different groom, words about love and commitment that now felt like lines in a play. But when Christopher spoke his vows, something unexpected happened. He looked directly into her eyes and spoke with such conviction that for a moment she almost believed him. "I promise to stand beside you, Christopher said, his voice carrying across the hushed garden. To support you in your dreams, to be a steady presence for you and Jamie, and to honor the trust you're placing in me today. I may not be who you expected, but I will be who you can count on. Monica felt tears stinging her eyes, and she wasn't sure if they were from grief over Derek's betrayal or something else entirely, gratitude perhaps, or the overwhelming strangeness of the moment. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Christopher leaned in for the ceremonial kiss, pausing just before their lips met to give her a questioning look. She gave the smallest nod, and he kissed her gently, briefly, a gesture more of solidarity than romance. The guests erupted in applause, though Monica could see the confusion on many faces. As she and Christopher walked back down the aisle together, she caught fragments of whispered conversations. What happened to Derek? Who is that man? Isn't that her boss? Patricia stood near the back, giving Monica a supportive smile, even as tears continued to stream down her face. The reception that followed was perhaps even more surreal than the ceremony. Christopher played his role perfectly, keeping a protective hand on Monica's lower back as they greeted guests, offering smooth explanations when questioned. Derek and I had a serious conversation last night, he would say with practiced ease. We both realized Monica deserved someone who was absolutely certain, and I've been certain about her for quite some time. Sometimes the heart knows what it wants, even if the timing seems unconventional. It was a masterful performance, and Monica found herself marveling at his ability to lie so convincingly, while somehow making it sound almost romantic. Several guests actually teared up at his explanation, praising his courage and expressing relief that Monica had found someone more mature and clearly more devoted. Monica's mother, however, was not so easily convinced. During the cocktail hour, she pulled Monica aside into the inn's library. "What is going on?" she demanded, her perfectly applied lipstick pressed into a thin line. "Where is Derek, and who is this Christopher person?" Monica's carefully maintained composure finally cracked. "Derek left, Mom. He ran away this morning. He couldn't go through with it." The words came out bitter and broken. "Christopher is my boss. He offered to stand in so I wouldn't have to cancel everything and face the humiliation in front of everyone." Her mother's eyes widened in shock, then narrowed in anger. That coward. That absolute coward. She pulled Monica into a fierce hug. "And your boss just volunteered to marry you, just like that?" "He said it doesn't have to be real," Monica whispered against her mother's shoulder. "We'll figure out the details later. I know it's crazy, but what else was I supposed to do? I couldn't face telling everyone. Couldn't watch Jamie's face when she realized." Her voice broke. "Shh. I know, baby. I know." Her mother stroked her hair. "We'll figure this out. But Monica, marriage, even a pretend one, is serious business. There are legal implications, financial entanglements. You barely know this man." "I know him well enough," Monica said, pulling back and wiping her eyes carefully to preserve what remained of her makeup. "He's fair, he's honest, and he's been nothing but professional in the 4 years I've worked for him. And right now, that's more than I can say about Derek." Her mother studied her face for a long moment. "Well, he certainly is handsome. And the way he looks at you—" "Mom, don't," Monica warned. "This isn't a fairy tale. It's damage control. If you say so, dear." Her mother's tone suggested she wasn't entirely convinced, but she let it drop. "Come on. They're about to cut the cake." The cake cutting was when Jamie truly came alive. She had been remarkably patient throughout the day, but now she bounced with excitement as Monica and Christopher held the knife together. "Make a wish, Mommy," Jamie called out. "That's what you're supposed to do." Monica closed her eyes. What could she wish for? That Derek would come back? No, she realized with surprising clarity. She didn't want that anymore. In just a few hours, that desire had evaporated, replaced by a strange new reality. She wished instead that whatever happened next, Jamie would be okay, that this bizarre decision wouldn't somehow damage her daughter further. When she opened her eyes, she found Christopher watching her with an unreadable expression. They fed each other small bites of cake while cameras flashed, and Monica was struck by how gentle he was, how carefully he wiped a bit of frosting from the corner of her mouth with his napkin, how naturally he scooped Jamie up when she demanded to taste the cake too. "You're good with her," Monica said quietly, as Jamie ran off to show her grandmother the frosting on her fingers. Christopher watched the little girl go, something soft crossing his features. "I always wanted children," he said, so quietly Monica almost didn't hear him. "That was one of the arguments that ended my engagement years ago. She wanted to focus on her career. Didn't want kids, at least not for many years. I respected that, but I also couldn't ignore what I wanted. In the end, we wanted different futures." It was the most personal thing he had ever shared with her. Monica looked at him with new eyes, seeing past the CEO persona to the man underneath. Someone who had also experienced loss and disappointment, who had also had to rebuild his life when things didn't go according to plan. "I'm sorry," she said. "That must have been difficult." "It was," Christopher acknowledged. "But it taught me something important. Better to face the truth early than to build a life on incompatible foundations." He turned to look at her directly. "What Derek did was cowardly and cruel, but at least he revealed his true character before you were legally bound to him." "Cold comfort," Monica muttered. "Perhaps, but comfort nonetheless." Christopher glanced around the reception, at the guests enjoying themselves, at Jamie dancing with Patricia, at the beautiful setting that would have been wasted if not for his intervention. "We should probably discuss the practical aspects of this arrangement. Not here, obviously, but soon." "Monday?" Monica suggested. "We could talk in your office before everyone else arrives." "Actually, I was thinking we might need somewhere more private, more neutral." Christopher hesitated, then continued. "I have a house in Clearwater, about 30 minutes from the office. It's large enough that you and Jamie could have your own space while we figure things out." "The apartment you're renting now, that was where you and Derek were living, wasn't it?" Monica nodded, a new wave of dread washing over her. She hadn't even thought about the logistics. Derek's things were all over her apartment. His clothes in her closet, his toiletries in her bathroom, his books on her shelves. The thought of going back there tonight, of facing all those remnants of their failed relationship, while trying to explain to Jamie what had happened, felt overwhelming. "I can't afford anything bigger on my own," Monica admitted. "I used most of my savings for this wedding." "You're my wife now," Christopher said, and the word sounded strange coming from his lips. "At least on paper. Let me help. Consider it part of our arrangement. You and Jamie move into the house. We maintain the appearance of a real marriage for a reasonable period. And when we eventually divorce, quietly and amicably, I'll make sure you're in a better financial position than you are now." "I don't want your charity," Monica said stiffly. "It's not charity. It's an investment." Christopher's business mind was clearly at work. "You're a talented editor, Monica. I've watched you develop authors who became bestsellers. You have instincts about stories that most people in this industry would kill for. But you've been held back by financial constraints, by single motherhood, by a lack of support. Consider this an opportunity to focus on your career without those burdens." "Everyone wins." Before Monica could respond, the DJ announced it was time for the first dance. Christopher offered his hand once again, and she took it, letting him lead her onto the dance floor. The string quartet had been replaced by soft jazz, and as Christopher pulled her into a formal dance position, Monica was acutely aware of how different this felt from dancing with Derek. Christopher was taller, more assured, and he moved with the kind of grace that spoke of expensive lessons in his youth. "I don't know what I'm doing," Monica confessed as they swayed to the music. "Any of this." "Neither do I," Christopher admitted, surprising her. "I'm making this up as I go along, but I'm good at solving problems, and right now, we both have problems that this arrangement might solve." "What problems could you possibly have?" Monica asked, genuinely curious. "You're successful, wealthy, respected." Christopher's jaw tightened slightly. "My board of directors has been pressuring me to settle down, to present a more stable, family-oriented image. Publishing is changing, becoming more about brand and personality than just the books themselves. A CEO who's married with a ready-made family looks better to investors than a workaholic bachelor." He paused. "I'm not proud of the optics-driven thinking, but it's reality. Your situation and mine actually complement each other quite well, from a practical standpoint. Monica should have been offended by the cold calculation in his words, but instead she found herself oddly comforted. At least he was being honest about his motivations. At least there were no false promises of love or happily ever after. No illusions that would inevitably shatter. The song ended, and guests applauded. Jamie rushed over, demanding a dance with the new daddy, a phrase that made both Monica and Christopher freeze. But Christopher recovered quickly, lifting Jamie into his arms and spinning her around as she giggled with delight. Monica watched them, her emotions a tangled mess of gratitude, confusion, fear, and something else she couldn't quite name. As the reception continued into the evening, Monica found herself observing Christopher with new attention, the way he remembered names of guests he'd just met, how he engaged Monica's elderly aunt in conversation about her garden, how he slipped the caterers an extra tip when he thought no one was looking. This was a man of unexpected depth, she realized. Whatever this strange arrangement turned out to be, at least she wasn't dealing with someone entirely unknown. When it came time to leave, tradition called for the couple to depart together. Christopher had arranged for a car to take them to the Riverside Inn's honeymoon suite, another detail that had already been paid for, and would go to waste otherwise. Monica's parents would take Jamie for the night, a plan that had been made weeks ago. As Monica hugged her daughter goodbye, Jamie whispered in her ear, "I like him, Mommy. He's nice. And he's really tall." Monica laughed despite everything. "Yes, sweetheart. He's very tall." In the car driving to the suite, silence stretched between them. Finally, Christopher spoke. "I'll sleep on the couch, or I can get a different room entirely if you prefer." "The couch is fine," Monica said. "And Christopher? Thank you. I still don't fully understand why you did this, but thank you." He looked at her in the dim light of the car, and for a moment his careful composure slipped, revealing something raw underneath. "Everyone deserves a rescue sometimes," he said quietly. "Even people who usually do the rescuing." Monica wondered what he meant by that, what pain lay beneath his controlled exterior. But before she could ask, they arrived at the inn. As they walked toward the honeymoon suite together, legally married but emotionally strangers, Monica couldn't help but think that her life had just taken the most unexpected turn imaginable. The only question now was where this turn would lead them. The first month of their arrangement passed in a blur of adjustments and carefully maintained pretenses. Monica and Jamie moved into Christopher's house in Clearwater, a stunning colonial-style home with 5 bedrooms, a sprawling backyard, and enough space that Monica could almost forget she was living with her boss. Almost. Christopher had been right about one thing: the house gave them room to breathe. Monica and Jamie occupied the entire second floor's east wing, with a master bedroom, a princess-themed room that Christopher had hastily arranged for Jamie, and a small sitting area that Monica converted into a home office. Christopher kept to the west wing, and their paths crossed mainly in the kitchen during breakfast and the occasional dinner. At work, they maintained absolute professionalism. Monica continued her duties as assistant editor, and Christopher remained the focused CEO, treating her exactly as he had before the wedding. If their colleagues suspected anything unusual about their relationship, they kept it to themselves. The official story, that Christopher and Monica had been quietly seeing each other, and Derek's departure had simply accelerated their plans, seemed to satisfy most people's curiosity. But Jamie was the wild card neither of them had fully anticipated. The little girl had taken to Christopher with alarming enthusiasm. She waited for him by the door each evening, insisted on showing him her homework, and had started calling him Dad Chris, despite Monica's attempts to discourage it. Christopher, for his part, seemed genuinely charmed by Jamie's attention. Monica would find them reading together in the library, or hear Jamie's laughter floating from the backyard, where Christopher was pushing her on the swing set he'd installed the second week they'd moved in. "You don't have to do all this," Monica said one Saturday morning, watching through the kitchen window as Christopher patiently helped Jamie plant flowers in the garden. "The swing set, the bedroom makeover, the time you're spending with her. This is supposed to be a business arrangement." Christopher came inside, wiping dirt from his hands. "Is spending time with a 6-year-old somehow violating our agreement? I enjoy her company. She's remarkably perceptive and funny. She's getting attached to you," Monica said carefully. "And when this ends, we'll handle it carefully," Christopher interrupted. but that's months away at minimum. We agreed to maintain this for at least a year to make it believable. In the meantime, why shouldn't Jamie benefit from having a stable male figure in her life? God knows Derek wasn't providing that. The mention of Derek still stung, though Monica was surprised to find the pain had dulled considerably. She hadn't heard from him since the wedding day. Not an apology, not an explanation. Nothing. Patricia had heard through mutual friends that he'd moved to Seattle, started a new job, and was apparently telling people that Monica had been too demanding about commitment. The narrative made Monica's blood boil, but Christopher had advised her to let it go. He's a coward creating a story that makes him feel better about his cowardice, Christopher had said. The best revenge is living well, and right now you're living considerably better than he is. It was true. Monica's stress levels had dropped dramatically. Without rent to worry about, without Derek's mood swings and increasing distance over the past months, things she'd ignored, she now realized. She felt lighter. Her work at Whitmore Publishing had improved noticeably. She'd discovered 3 promising new authors in the past month, and Christopher had approved her request to lead a new imprint focused on diverse voices in contemporary fiction. But it was during a company event in late October that everything shifted. Whitmore Publishing was hosting a gala to celebrate their 50th anniversary. It was a black-tie affair at the Grandview Hotel, with authors, agents, industry professionals, and major investors in attendance. Christopher had asked Monica to accompany him as his wife, their first major public appearance as a couple in professional circles. Monica wore a deep emerald evening gown that Patricia had helped her choose, and when she descended the stairs that evening, she found Christopher waiting in the foyer, wearing a perfectly tailored tuxedo. He looked up, and something flickered in his expression, surprise, appreciation, something more, before he quickly masked it. "You look beautiful," he said simply, offering his arm. "You clean up pretty well yourself," Monica replied, trying to keep her tone light even as her heart did an unexpected flutter. She'd been living with this man for a month, seeing him in casual weekend clothes, in his reading glasses, sometimes rumpled from working late in his home office. But this version of Christopher Whitmore, polished, commanding, devastatingly handsome, reminded her of exactly who she'd married. One of the most eligible bachelors in the publishing world. The gala was magnificent. Crystal chandeliers, champagne flowing freely, a 10-piece orchestra playing in the ballroom. Christopher introduced Monica to everyone who mattered. Investors, best-selling authors, media personalities. He kept his hand on her waist, leaned in to whisper context about various people, made sure she was included in every conversation. It felt less like a business arrangement and more like they were actually a couple. "Your husband is clearly smitten," one of the authors, Margaret Chen, said to Monica when Christopher stepped away to speak with an investor. Margaret was a best-selling historical fiction writer whose last 3 books Monica had edited. "I've known Christopher for 15 years, and I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you." "We're still in the honeymoon phase," Monica deflected, uncomfortable with the observation. Margaret hummed knowingly. "If you say so. But Monica, dear, some advice from someone who's been married for 30 years. Sometimes the best relationships start from unexpected places. Don't dismiss something real just because it didn't begin conventionally." Before Monica could respond, Christopher returned with 2 glasses of champagne. "Margaret, I hope you're not filling my wife's head with embarrassing stories about my early days in publishing. Only the most scandalous ones," Margaret teased, winking at Monica before drifting away. As the evening progressed, Monica found herself relaxing, actually enjoying the event. She danced with Christopher, laughed at industry gossip, and felt, for the first time since the wedding, like maybe this crazy arrangement wasn't entirely terrible. Then Vanessa Hartley appeared. Monica had heard whispers about Vanessa, Christopher's ex-fiancée, the woman who'd broken his heart 5 years ago. She was a literary agent now, representing some of the biggest names in publishing, and she was stunning. Tall, blonde, impeccably dressed in a white gown that probably cost more than Monica's car. "Christopher," Vanessa said, appearing at their table like an elegant ghost from the past. "I heard you'd gotten married. I had to see for myself." Christopher's entire body tensed beside Monica, his hand tightening almost imperceptibly on his champagne glass. "Vanessa, I didn't realize you were on the guest list. I'm representing 3 of your top authors now. Vanessa said smoothly. Of course I'm on the guest list. Her eyes slid to Monica, assessing and dismissive in a single glance. So this is the new wife. How unexpected. Monica felt her spine straighten. She'd dealt with condescending people before, and she wasn't about to be intimidated now. Monica Whitmore, she said, extending her hand with cool politeness. And you are? Vanessa Hartley. I'm sure Christopher has mentioned me. Vanessa's smile didn't reach her eyes. We were engaged, after all, before he became so impossibly married to his work that there was no room for an actual relationship. That's not quite how I remember it, Christopher said, his voice dangerously quiet. As I recall, you made it very clear that your career came first, last, and always. I simply accepted that and moved on. Did you? Vanessa's perfectly arched eyebrow rose. Because from where I'm standing, this sudden marriage looks rather like a rebound. Or perhaps a convenient arrangement. Her gaze sharpened on Monica. You work for him, don't you? I recognize you from the office. Assistant editor, right? The implication was clear and insulting. Monica felt heat rising in her cheeks. But before she could respond, Christopher stood abruptly, taking Monica's hand and pulling her gently to her feet. Excuse us, Vanessa. My wife and I were just about to dance. His tone made it clear the conversation was over. On the dance floor, Monica could feel Christopher's tension radiating through his formal dance hold. I'm sorry about that, he said tightly. Vanessa has always had a gift for saying exactly the wrong thing at the wrong time. She's beautiful, Monica observed, surprising herself with the comment. She's calculating, Christopher corrected, and she has a talent for making people feel small. I should have warned you she might be here. Why did you really agree to this arrangement? Monica asked suddenly, the champagne loosening her tongue. And don't give me the line about board pressure. That woman clearly still affects you. Is this some kind of elaborate way to prove you've moved on? Christopher missed a step, the first time Monica had ever seen him falter. He recovered quickly, but his eyes when they met hers were raw with unexpected honesty. Maybe partly, he admitted. But Monica, you have to understand. Vanessa and I ended 5 years ago. I'm not carrying a torch for her. What I am carrying is the lesson she taught me. That I wanted something more than just success and status. I wanted a family, a real home, something meaningful beyond quarterly earnings reports. He paused, seeming to struggle with his next words. When I saw you in that bridal suite, abandoned and heartbroken but still trying to protect your daughter, something clicked into place. Here was someone who understood what mattered. Here was a chance to maybe build something real, even if it started from the strangest possible beginning. Monica's breath caught. This was more than Christopher had shared in all their previous conversations combined. You're saying this is real for you? I'm saying I don't know what this is, Christopher answered honestly. But it's not nothing, Monica. Not anymore. Not for me. The music swelled around them, and Monica felt the ground shifting beneath her feet once again. She had entered this arrangement out of desperation, viewing it as a temporary solution to an impossible situation. But somewhere between breakfast conversations and watching Christopher read bedtime stories to Jamie, between his quiet support at work and the way he defended her against Vanessa's subtle cruelty, something had changed. Before she could process what she was feeling, much less articulate it, a commotion near the entrance drew everyone's attention. Monica turned to see hotel security escorting someone out, and her heart stopped. It was Derek. He looked terrible, unshaven, disheveled, his dress shirt wrinkled and partially untucked. He was shouting something, fighting against the security guard's firm grip. Monica, I need to talk to you. Please, I made a mistake." The ballroom went silent. Every eye turned to Monica, then to Christopher, then back to the scene unfolding at the entrance. Monica felt frozen, her mind unable to process what was happening. Christopher's arm came around her waist, steady and grounding. "Do you want to talk to him?" he asked quietly, his voice for her ears only. Did she? A month ago she might have. A month ago some part of her might still have hoped for an explanation, an apology, maybe even a reconciliation. But now, Looking at Derek's desperate face, all she felt was a distant pity mixed with anger. "No," she said firmly. "I don't." Christopher nodded and gestured to the head of security, who began leading Derek more forcefully toward the exit. But Derek's voice carried across the ballroom one last time. "You're making a mistake, Monica. He doesn't love you. This is all fake. Everyone knows it. Come back to Seattle with me. We can start over." The words hung in the air like poison. Monica saw the speculation on people's faces, the whispers starting, the damage being done to the carefully constructed story she and Christopher had built. Vanessa, still standing near their table, smiled. A small, satisfied curve of her lips that told Monica this was exactly the kind of drama she'd hoped to witness. Christopher's hand tightened on Monica's waist, and when he spoke, his voice carried across the now silent ballroom with absolute authority. "My wife has nothing to say to a man who abandoned her on their wedding day. And while I'm addressing the elephant in the room that Mr. Brennan has so kindly introduced, yes, our marriage began unconventionally. Yes, I stepped in when he left Monica at the altar. But what's become clear to everyone except apparently him is that his departure was the best thing that could have happened, because it brought Monica to me. What we have isn't fake. It's the most real thing in my life." The sincerity in Christopher's voice, the conviction, made Monica's eyes sting with sudden tears. She looked up at him, searching his face, and what she saw there made her heart race. This wasn't performance. This wasn't for show. Christopher meant every word. The ballroom erupted in applause, whether for Christopher's speech or simply to break the tension. Monica couldn't tell. Derek was fully removed from the premises, and the orchestra struck up a new song, encouraging guests to return to their conversations and dancing. But Monica couldn't move. She stood in Christopher's arms, the truth crashing over her like a wave. She had fallen in love with her fake husband. "Christopher," she whispered, but she didn't know what to say next. He looked down at her, and in his eyes she saw her own confusion, hope, and fear reflected back. "We should probably talk," he said. "Really talk about what this is and what we want it to be." Monica nodded, her throat too tight for words. They left the gala early, riding home in charged silence. When they arrived at the house, Mrs. Patterson, the babysitter, reported that Jamie was asleep, and Christopher paid her generously before she left. Alone in the quiet house, Christopher and Monica stood in the living room, the weight of everything unsaid pressing down on them. "Did you mean what you said?" Monica asked. "At the gala?" "Every word," Christopher confirmed. "Monica, I know this started as an arrangement. I know we agreed it was temporary. But somewhere in the past month, you and Jamie became the best part of my day. Coming home isn't just returning to a house anymore. It's coming home to you. And I know that's not what we planned, and I know it complicates everything. But I can't keep pretending I feel nothing when the truth is, I feel everything." Monica's heart was pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. "I thought I was going crazy," she admitted. "Feeling this way about you when I barely know you. When we started this as a business deal, you know me better than most people ever have," Christopher said, taking a step closer. "You've seen me without my armor. You've watched me struggle with Jamie's math homework and burn toast and fall asleep reading contracts on the couch. That's not the CEO version of me. That's just me. I've been so afraid," Monica confessed. "Afraid of getting hurt again. Afraid of making another mistake. Afraid that what I'm feeling isn't real, that it's just gratitude, or proximity, or..." Christopher closed the distance between them, his hands coming up to cup her face with infinite gentleness. "Tell me what you're feeling right now, in this moment. Not what you think you should feel or what makes logical sense, just the truth." Monica looked into his eyes, those gray eyes that had become so familiar, so dear. "I'm feeling like I want this to be real. Like I want you to kiss me, really kiss me. Not for show or ceremony, but because we both want it. I'm feeling terrified and hopeful, and..." He kissed her. It was nothing like the chaste kiss at their wedding ceremony. This was deep and searching, full of a month's worth of restrained longing and newfound honesty. Monica's hands found their way into his hair, and Christopher pulled her closer, one hand sliding around her waist, while the other cradled the back of her head. The kiss tasted like champagne and possibility, like everything Monica had thought she'd lost when Derek abandoned her and everything she'd unexpectedly found in Christopher's quiet strength. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Christopher rested his forehead against hers. "We're doing this backwards," he said with a breathless laugh. "Getting married first, falling in love after. Maybe that's not such a bad way to do it," Monica replied, smiling through happy tears. "We skipped all the uncertainty about whether it would work out. We're already committed." "Legally binding commitment," Christopher agreed, pressing a soft kiss to her temple. "Though I should probably take you on an actual date at some point. Do this properly." "I'd like that," Monica said. Then, more seriously, "What about Derek? What he said tonight, people will talk." "Let them talk," Christopher said firmly. "Anyone who matters already knows the truth. That you're brilliant and strong and that I'm the luckiest man alive. The rest is just noise." They stood there in the quiet living room, holding each other, both marveling at how life could change so completely in such a short time. The arrangement that had begun as a desperate rescue had transformed into something neither of them had expected. A real chance at happiness, built on honesty, respect, and a growing love that felt more solid than anything Monica had experienced before. "Stay with me tonight?" Christopher asked softly. "Not in separate wings, with me." Monica pulled back just enough to see his face, to see the vulnerability and hope written there. She thought about Jamie sleeping peacefully upstairs, about the life they were building together, about the strange and wonderful path that had led her here. "Yes," she said simply. "Yes." 6 months later, Monica stood in Christopher's home office, their home office now, reviewing the manuscript that would launch her new imprint. Spring sunlight streamed through the windows, and she could hear Jamie's laughter from the backyard, where Christopher was teaching her to ride the bicycle he'd bought for her 7th birthday last week. The past months had been a revelation. After the night of the gala, everything had changed. They'd sat down with Jamie together and explained, as best as one could explain to a child, that what had started as a complicated grown-up situation had become real. Jamie, with the adaptability of children, had simply shrugged and asked if that meant Christopher was really her dad now. When he'd said yes, if she wanted him to be, she'd thrown her arms around his neck and declared it the best news ever. Monica's phone buzzed with a text from Patricia. "Lunch next week? Need to hear all the details about the honeymoon you're actually taking." Monica smiled. Yes, she and Christopher were finally taking a proper honeymoon. 2 weeks in Italy, just the two of them. Her parents were thrilled to watch Jamie, who was equally excited about the special grandparent time, and about her parents finally being real married like in movies. The doorbell rang, interrupting her thoughts. Monica frowned. They weren't expecting anyone. She walked to the front door and opened it, then froze. Derek stood on the porch, looking nothing like the disheveled man from the gala. He was clean-shaven, well-dressed, and sober. His eyes were red-rimmed, and he held a small envelope in his hands. "Monica," he said quietly, "I know I'm probably the last person you want to see, but I needed to come here, to apologize properly, to explain." Monica's first instinct was to close the door, but something in Derek's demeanor stopped her. This wasn't the desperate man from 6 months ago. This was someone who looked genuinely remorseful and, more than that, changed. "You have 5 minutes," she said, not inviting him inside. Derek nodded, accepting the boundary. "I've been in therapy. Real therapy, not just talking to a friend. I've been dealing with things. My fear of commitment, my pattern of running when things get serious. The therapist helped me understand that leaving you wasn't about you at all. It was about me being terrified of being a father, of being responsible for Jamie, of potentially failing both of you." He paused, his voice cracking slightly. "That doesn't excuse what I did. Nothing excuses it. But I wanted you to know it wasn't because you weren't enough. You were always more than enough. I was the one who wasn't." Monica felt the old anger stirring, but it was distant now, like remembering pain rather than feeling it. "Why come here now, Derek? Why tell me this?" "Because you deserved an explanation. A real one, not the cowardly silence I gave you." He held out the envelope. "This is a check. It's for all the money you spent on the wedding, plus interest. I can't give you back the time or the hurt, but I can at least give you this. No strings, no expectations. I don't want forgiveness. I don't even deserve it. I just want you to know that I'm sorry, truly sorry, and that I'm grateful you found someone who could give you what I couldn't. Monica took the envelope, more out of surprise than anything else. Before she could respond, Christopher appeared at her side, Jamie perched on his shoulders. His expression was cautious but not hostile. Derek, Christopher acknowledged with a nod. Christopher. Jamie. Derek's eyes filled with tears as he looked at the little girl, who was now smiling happily from her perch. I'm glad you have a real family now. I'm glad he stepped up when I couldn't. You both deserve that. Jamie tilted her head, studying Derek with a child's directness. You were supposed to marry Mommy, but you left. That was mean. It was, Derek agreed, his voice thick. It was very mean, and I'm sorry. But it's okay now, Jamie continued with the simple wisdom of children. Because Dad Chris married Mommy instead, and he takes me to the park and reads me stories and doesn't leave. She paused, then added generously, but I hope you're not sad anymore. Derek's composure cracked, tears spilling down his cheeks. Thank you, Jamie. That's very kind of you. He looked at Monica one last time. I won't bother you again. I just needed you to know I'm working on being better, even if it's too late for us. I hope you're happy, Monica. Really happy. I am, Monica said softly, and realized it was absolutely true. I hope you find peace, Derek. I really do. After Derek left, Christopher set Jamie down and she ran back to the yard to practice more bicycle riding. He turned to Monica, searching her face. Are you okay? I'm more than okay, Monica said, surprising herself with the realization, that closure. It felt good. I don't hate him anymore. I just feel free. Christopher pulled her close, kissing the top of her head. He was right about one thing. You do have a real family now. We all do. That evening, after Jamie was tucked into bed with her favorite story, Monica and Christopher sat on the back porch, watching fireflies dance in the warm spring air. Monica thought about how far she'd come from that devastating morning when Derek had abandoned her. How what had seemed like the worst day of her life had actually been the doorway to something infinitely better. I've been thinking, Christopher said, breaking the comfortable silence, about adopting Jamie officially, if you're open to it. I know her biological father isn't in the picture, and I'd like to make it legal, what she and I have, what we all have. Monica felt tears spring to her eyes. Happy tears this time. She would love that. I would love that. Good, Christopher said, pulling her close, because you two are mine now, officially, legally, and most importantly, in every way that matters. As they sat there in the gathering darkness, Monica reflected on the strange journey that had brought them together. A wedding day disaster had become the beginning of the greatest love story she'd never expected. Sometimes, she realized, the best things in life came from the most unexpected places. Sometimes you had to lose everything to find what you were really meant to have all along. And sometimes, the person who rescued you at your lowest moment turned out to be exactly who you'd been searching for all along. You just hadn't known it yet. The future stretched before them, bright with possibility. Italy next month, the launch of her imprint, Christopher's new book deal, Jamie's adoption, and countless ordinary moments that would make up their extraordinary life together. It wasn't the fairy tale Monica had imagined. It was better, because it was real, built on honesty and respect, and a love that had grown from the most unlikely beginning. Christopher squeezed her hand, and Monica squeezed back, both of them smiling in the dark.